So one of the things that I love about journaling is that it is a great method of self-improvement. This is my journal, and I like to use this thing as a way of reflecting about the kind of person that I am. And as I've done some of that reflection, I like to then think about how can I become better? And that's what I want to talk about today. How can you journal for self-improvement? I think we have to talk about something very important here. That's figuring out exactly what we mean by self-improvement. Importantly, when I talk about self-improvement, I don't mean anything like productivity. I am not talking about using your journal to get more done or to become a more efficient person. In fact, I bet that a lot of people would look at some of my journaling advice and say that that's not efficient at all. I think we could quibble about what efficiency means here and whether or not some of the stuff I say counts as efficient. But honestly, I think that's kind of besides the point. What I'm interested in is becoming a better person. Now, I'm a philosopher by training, and when I talk about becoming a better person, I mean something kind of specific. I'm thinking along the lines of ancient Greek philosophers like Aristotle or the Stoics or the later Romans like Marcus Aurelius. And so when I talk about becoming a better person, I'm talking about building virtues. Now, classically, there were 4 virtues which were considered the most important, and those were prudence, justice, courage, and temperance. So for the rest of the video, I'll take it for granted that when I'm talking about self-improvement, I'm really thinking of it in this ancient Greek sense about developing virtues. And I think it's just easier to put it in terms of becoming a better person. I know that that phrase sometimes scares people away because they think we're going to get into the habit of comparing ourselves to others and thinking, am I better than the person next to me or are they better than me? And I just think that we can avoid all of that. Instead, we're only comparing ourselves to our former selves and thinking about what we want our future selves to look like. Now, one challenge you might face if you're trying to journal more is trying to find the time. Maybe you always forget your notebook at home, or maybe you're someone who likes to use your phone instead. If that's the case, then you should try today's sponsor, Day One. I've actually been using Day One to supplement my journaling since about 2018, and the app has just gotten better and better over time. Sometimes I like to draw or to add photos in journals, and Day One makes this super simple. Adding photos is just a few simple taps on the screen, and then you have more than a written record of the day. And then when you're going back through your journal, it's super easy to search and review. I've been married for almost 5 years, and I have journal entries in Day One from before my wife and I were even engaged, just photos of us going on early dates, and actually even a photo of the day that we got engaged. So not only can I look back and see what I was thinking, I can even see the look on her face while I read that journal. And on top of that, Day One lets you add drawings and recordings. So any way that you want to journal, Day One is going to let you do that. And I'm happy to say that when you sign up using my link down in the description, you will get a 2-month free trial to Day One Premium that you can't get anywhere else. So go check out Day One at dayoneapp.com/Henderson and use my code Henderson for that 2-month free trial of Day One. If you're journaling to improve yourself or to build your character, or in those more philosophical terms, to cultivate those virtues, then it really comes down to 3 things. Where have I come from? Where am I now? And where do I want to go? First, you need to have an understanding of where you are right now. So let's put it in terms of some of those virtues, like courage. We ask ourselves, are we brave enough when we need to be? Have we stood up for things that we really believe in? Have we let social pressures dictate who we are in public too much? Those are essential questions to ask about how courageous you actually are. Or temperance might be one that really matters for us. So temperance is basically the virtue of self-control. It's the ability to restrain yourself when you know that something that you want to do isn't good for you. For some of us, temperance might be a matter of how we handle like food or alcohol, knowing that we need to moderate a little bit because in the long run, it will be better for us. And for others, and this is definitely me, it's about regulating how you use technology. I've mentioned before that despite being a YouTuber, despite being someone who actually loves YouTube a lot, like I could watch YouTube for hours if I let myself, I've taken YouTube off of my phone because what I've realized is if it's too easy and accessible, then I'll just watch it for hours and hours every single day. So as I'm journaling, what I like to do is think about both my successes, the things that I do well, but also my failures. You don't want to focus too much on your successes because if you only focus on your successes, then you won't realize that there's anything about yourself that you might want to improve. But if you focus too much on your failures, well, it's really easy to wallow in despair or to feel hopeless, and you end up just giving up. So being honest with yourself about those habits that you've built or things in general that you're just able to do well, and being honest about the places where you fall short is essential. And really, I think that's kind of an important larger, broader point that this only really works if you're being honest with yourself. If you're actually looking at your life in a matter-of-fact way and willing to write about it and to think about it. If you're not willing to do that, then all the journaling in the world really couldn't help you. The basic format of a journal entry for me is pretty simple. I like to start by just writing about my day. This is usually focusing on some particular event. I don't try to have a full record of my entire day. I don't write about going to the post office or about what I ate unless it was particularly important. Then I like to do a little bit of self-assessment. I write about something that went well that day, or how I handled the situation, and I write about a failure. At first, this can feel a little bit odd, but if you do it long enough, you'll find that almost without exception, you can always find something that you're proud of, some kind of success related to that important event in your day, and you can always find a failure. And after I've thought about my success and a failure, I like to take a step back and think about the larger narrative of my life and what that success and failure tell me about my place in it. So as you think about things that might need improvement, you need to ask yourself, how did you come to be this way? You also want to ask that question about things that you like about yourself. When you start looking backwards and you ask, how did I become the person that I am? I like to think of this in terms of constructing a narrative about yourself. This is an idea that I've gotten from many different philosophers over the years. Big names would be like Alistair McIntyre or Paul Ricoeur or Martin Heidegger or Maria Scheckman. The idea that some of these philosophers share is that we are essentially storytelling beings. Some philosophers will go so far as to say that we actually sort of create ourselves by telling stories. Others are more modest and will say that we just make sense of the world through narrative. And I think that second point is definitely right. A narrative takes disconnected events and tries to draw connections. And once you have those connections, you have explanations about why you are the way that you are now. When you've thought a little bit about this narrative, what you're really doing is something that the philosopher Julia Honest calls making sense of your life as a whole. Basically, when you start to make sense of your life as a whole, you can start asking the question of, am I happy with the way that my life is going? And that helps you move to that third stage, which is asking about where you want to go. If the person that you are now is a product of your previous circumstances, then the person you will be in the future is also going to be a product of previous circumstances, but you have some amount of control over those circumstances. Understanding where you come from and thus who you are gives you power over who you become. By journaling in this fashion consistently, what you're actually doing is engaging in prolonged self-reflection. You are essentially getting to know yourself. You are telling the story of yourself to yourself. And I think crucially, once you've begun to think about it like a story, you stop just being a character in the story and you become its author.